Okay, welcome everyone. Today's topic is going to be the top 10 tips for keeping your strata insurance premiums low, or I should just call it as low as possible. You all know that strata doesn't really, the insurance doesn't seem to, although it's dipped a little bit in the last couple of years, it doesn't really seem to go too far backwards. It always kind of goes up, but it is really important. It is generally, for most strata, it's going to be your number one expense item. And anything that you can do to still keep it at full replacement cost, but to keep it as low as possible is a very good thing. So that's the topic for today. We're going to have about a 15-minute presentation. And then if you guys have any questions, maybe I'd ask just save them to the end, and you can fire away. We're going to leave 45 minutes for Q&A. It doesn't have to be pertaining to what we're talking about today, the strata insurance. It can be about anything strata related. If you guys have more private stuff that you don't want to maybe share with the group in the context, then we can take that offline, and that's just fine too. So I'm going to get things going here. So who am I? My name is Chris Stepchuk. I'm the CEO and managing broker for Fort Park Property Management and Real Estate. Of course, you guys all know that. And what we do, we guide strata councils with clarity, confidence, and care, specializing in strata management, residential, commercial, and light industrial since 2008. One thing we like to say, effective strata management isn't just about maintaining properties. It's about building trust through clear communication, proactive solutions, and consistent support. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of it, the top 10 tips, and then we're going to throw in a bonus one there at the end as well. So first one is your depreciation report. So the insurance companies have always kind of asked for these. It depends on the exact insurer, and it depends on the situation with your particular strata. But now that they're going to be mandatory, they're going to be asking for these a lot more, because before you could just say, well, we don't have one. But that's going to be very difficult to do moving forward. If you don't have one, then it raises red flags. Why don't you have one when they're now mandatory? So it may look like you're trying to hide something if you don't get one. So of course, everyone here in the Lower Mainland needs to have one by the end of July of next year. And it's just a good planning tool for you regardless. Next thing is your roof maintenance. So insurance companies really don't like water ingress. A lot of them won't pay for water ingress claims if it's due to a lack of maintenance or things like that. They'll deny the claim. So you don't want to ever be in a situation where you're not able to have a claim if you do get a significant amount of damage. So keep on top of your roof maintenance, have it done, every year, or at least every couple years. Get someone up there for peace of mind, just making sure there's no pooling water, making sure there's no clogged drains or anything like that. No leaks, it needs to be recaulked, and the flashings and the cappings and all that stuff need to be recaulked every few years. So you can get a report on that, and you can supply that to your insurance company and make sure then they will know that you guys are right on top of that. And when I say roof maintenance, roofs are typically where we see a lot of water ingress and damage, but that can be windows and other things as well. It doesn't have to be just for the roof, right? Anything, whether it's your membrane or windows or doors, anything where there's ceiling and they can potentially water can get in. Number 3 is update your bylaws. So we've got a number of bylaws that I've seen over time, and the strata insurers do ask periodically about these things. They don't always, but sometimes they do, and they'll ask things like, is smoking allowed inside the suites or in common property? If you don't allow smoking, there's a lesser chance of fire, of course. A lot of the fires are started by someone smoking and ashing in the garbage can or just on a couch or something like that. No barbecues on patios or balconies. I'm not saying you have to have that bylaw, but again, that's something that they sometimes ask for. Um, Regular replacement schedule for hot water tanks. So do you have a bylaw that says people need to get their hot water tank replaced every 10 years if there are in-suite hot water tanks? Those things can cause a huge amount of damage if they rust out in the bottom and they're not near a drain. And we've seen, just there's a lot of water in there and it can go down 2 or 3 floors and cause a lot of damage, not just to the suite that it happens in, but to the suites below. Use of stainless braided hoses. So this is another one that you can have a bylaw or at least a rule. Or sorry, you can't have a rule. It'd have to be a bylaw because it's a strata lot thing. Making people change from those rubber hoses that crack and do leak to stainless steel braided hoses for the washing machine. Ban on short-term rentals. So this is something that they're sometimes asking about. We haven't seen that a lot, but I have seen it come up every now and again. If the strata is being used more as a hotel type use than a typical long-term residence, they are interested in that. And carburetors is another one. Carburetors can cause a lot of damage for backups, sewer backups. And we see some stratas put in bylaws saying that when they do eventually fail, that they have to be replaced with just conventional piping, no carburetors. Number 4 is sprinklers. So this is another huge area that we see claims on if a sprinkler goes off. It can be related to fire, but not necessarily. Someone can just break the thing and it goes off or it's defective. We had one yesterday in one of our buildings. It's actually a new building. And the sprinkler, there was some malfunction and it caused a huge amount of damage. So it doesn't take long for sprinklers to cause a lot of damage. So get them checked regularly. If they're getting older, maybe they need to be changed out. It is expensive to do, but they should be part of your annual fire inspection. Which leads me into number 5, which is fire inspection. So this is a good one. Of course, I'm sure most of you get an annual fire inspection done. This is part of the fire code, depending on the municipality you're in. Both in-suite, common property, fire extinguishers, hoses, smoke detectors, sprinkler heads, fire hydrants, and backup batteries, things like that. So if there was a fire, and of course you're going to have, when there's a catastrophic loss from fire, you've got a lot of parties involved, and doing inspections and things like that and figuring out the cause of the fire. And if it's due to faulty equipment because you didn't do your fire inspection, there may be the potential for your claim not to be honored, which would be absolutely horrible. Number 6 is obtain 3 quotes. So even if you've been with the same insurance company for many years, that's fine. You can stick with them. It's not like you need to change around, but it never hurts to obtain competitive quotes. Just keeps everyone honest. And, like I said, for most buildings, this is going to be your number one expense item. So going out there, getting a couple extra quotes isn't going to hurt. It is a little bit of extra work, but it's, if you get a 10% reduction on a $100,000 insurance premium, that's a significant amount of money. And rates are, there's more. Like 5 years ago, you couldn't really do that. You were lucky just to get one quote and you were lucky just to get insurance, but the market has softened up quite a bit now. As the prices have gone up, it's more profitable for the insurers to be doing property insurance again. So you may get some competitive quotes now. Deductibles. So this is something you can play around with a little bit. And we've done that before where we've had buildings that have increased their deductibles, particularly water, and that can bring your premium down. It doesn't always make a huge dent, but it can definitely make a difference. So something worth looking at if you're trying to reduce your premium. Maybe you take your water deductible from 25,000 to 100,000. It does create potential for other issues, and the owners would probably, you'd want to make sure that you get their buy-in to do something like that, but it can save you guys some money, a significant amount. Earthquake deductible. So this is another thing, falls in the deductible category. So you can manipulate your earthquake deductible, usually with most insurance companies, from the standard 10%. You can go to 15 or even 20%. You can even reduce it a little bit, which isn't going to help your premium, but that's something that you can play around with if you're trying to get your premiums down. And you can even do it for 1 year. You don't have to do it on a annual basis. You can maybe do it for 1 year if you're trying to save a little bit. Electrical. So this is something that is obviously insurance companies are looking at. You want to make sure that your electrical system is in tip-top shape. If it's an older thing, it hasn't been inspected for a while, it might be worth, if you've got some reasons to believe that it might not pass certain inspections. If you've got anything like old aluminum wiring or knob and tube or 60 amp boxes, this is not going to go over well with the insurers. They may never even know that you have this if they don't ask the question, but if there was a claim and then something happened, you'd be darn sure that they could find out and would find out. So if you think you've got any of those old, aluminum or knob and tube is quite old. You don't see that much in any modern buildings, but we do see it from time to time, or 60 amp boxes. Just make sure that you guys are getting those upgraded. Number 10 is plumbing. So kind of like electrical, this is something that insurance companies will ask about from time to time. They don't always, but again, if you had an issue due to one of these systems, then they may deny the claim. So, we see copper piping can be a huge problem here. If you haven't had it replaced and you're getting pinhole leaks, it might make sense to do that. It can be very expensive to redo the whole service line system in your building, but if you're continually having insurance claims because of it, then it's probably worth it. It can range from, I don't know, we've done lots of these, from 200,000 up to 500,000, depends on the size of your building. Any PEX, you want to retrofit with PEX, the plastic, and make sure you get rid of any poly B that's hanging around. And insurers definitely ask about poly B, and they don't like it. And I know a lot of stratas still have that in common areas as well as in suites. So it's a very good idea to get ahead of the curve. Don't wait for something to happen. Get that replaced, and then you don't have to worry about it. And the very last one that we've got for today is stay claims free. So avoid the tendency to make claims whenever possible. If it's, around your deductible, sometimes, it might be worth just paying it out of pocket rather than opening a claim. Of course, if it exceeds your deductible, the damage by a significant amount, you don't really have a choice. But if it's, if you have a judgment call to make and you think that it might be easier just to pay for it yourselves, then that might be easier, and then you don't have to worry about opening a claim. And then that goes on your record, and then every time you're trying to get a quote, people are looking at that. So that's definitely something that I see stratas try to do when they can and when it makes sense, and I think it's definitely worthwhile to try and do that. And so to summarize, we've got depreciation report, get it done. Roof maintenance, make sure you're getting that done on a if not an annual basis, get it done every couple of years. Get a report done. Update your bylaws to be insurance friendly. Sprinklers, get them maintained and get them inspected if they're getting to be that kind of, they'll be identified in your depreciation report if they're starting to get to the end of their service life. Fire inspection, get it done every year. Obtain 3 quotes whenever it makes sense for your insurance. Look at your deductibles, see if you can put them up a little bit. Earthquake deductible. Service your electrical and your plumbing, make sure they're up to date and everything looks good there. Sometimes even on electrical and plumbing, the insurer, if they have any reason to believe there's something fishy, they may even ask for a report from a licensed contractor. And then stay claims free. I think that's one of the absolute biggest ones that we can say. So that's it for today for the presentation, and I'm going to open it up to any questions that you guys might have. Again, it doesn't have to be specifically for this topic. It can be about anything at all. Yes. Go ahead, Eva. Yeah.
Okay. I have a general one. Are you going to send this PowerPoint presentation to us? I've been taking notes, but can you forward this?
Yes, we will. We'll send this, and we'll also send out a link to the video, so you guys can watch that on our YouTube channel. Okay,
my second question has to do with electrical. So we have a system throughout the entire building. What responsibility is there as an individual owner around electrical stuff in my own unit? How do I know if it's my responsibility or if it's a strata responsibility if something goes wrong?
Well, usually the strata, because the electrical system is tied into a system for the whole building, we would usually say that the strata would take care of the electrical type stuff. Now, if it's just a breaker or something simple, maybe you can have the owners do that themselves. But I would generally guide most stratas that electrical is it's an integrated component, kind of like sprinkler systems, right? If you look at sprinklers, like a sprinkler head is in your individual strata lot, right? It's within the boundaries of your strata lot, but it's tied into the overall system. And therefore should be taken care of by the strata. Electrical is kind of the same. If you're using too much, you only have so much power to your whole building that's shared. So if you haven't upgraded it and then a bunch of people are using EVs and now your panel is blowing all the time because your building doesn't have enough power, then it has to be, a common property, a strata solution rather than just one unit.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason that the EPRs are going to be mandatory for this upcoming year, is just so that the strata kind of is in charge of that and looking at, if everyone's putting in heat pumps or electric vehicle chargers, or rather than it just each individual doing something on their own, the whole building's doing it.
Yep. Thank you.
Raul.
How are you doing?
Hey, good.
I have a question about, you were talking about the water tanks, the hot water tanks. In our building, we have just 2 of them for the whole building. There's no individual ones. In those cases, we need to let the insurance know that we don't have any in the building except on the underground parking, or
yeah. So in the case where you have a boiler and hot water tank system and no individual hot water tanks, which is most, no, I shouldn't say, but a lot of apartment style stratas have that set up. That's really up to the strata corporation just to make sure that you guys are maintaining that and you're doing the regular maintenance on it and replacing them whenever they need to be replaced. The insurance company might ask about it. They're going to see in the depreciation report, they're going to see if it's past its serviceable life or not, and they may ask you to replace it. But it's not as concerning if it's in the parkade than it is if it's on the 4th floor of a building, where it's going to cause like major damage. And if they go in a parkade, we just had one actually that happened in one of our buildings too, and it's, you know, most of the water just went into the drain. It wasn't really major damage.
Okay, and sorry, just a quick second question about the number 11 or the bonus one that you were talking about, the stay claims free. In our case, of course, because we're mixed strata with the commercial and having so many issues in that relationship, and having all this, you know, legal issues with the commercial, that we can't avoid staying free, as in, you know, having to claim for, you know, lawyers guidance and blah blah. In those cases, it's unavoidable, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. So when I say stay claims free, it's only if you can avoid opening a claim. And, you know, in your instance, I don't think you really have a choice there. In a lot of instances, maybe you have like a $25,000 water deductible, and the emergency restoration company comes in there and says it's going to be $26,000, right? So therefore, you have to open a claim, and they're just trying to push it over that limit. But maybe it isn't over $26,000. Maybe you can get that down to $24,000 and do the work yourselves. So it's only where it's very close. You know, maybe you need a second quote on the restoration company just to make sure that you don't have to open a claim, because sometimes you just, you know, it's really close and you just don't have to.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep. Sonia. Go ahead, Sonia.
I think you're muted.
Oh, you're on mute there.
Oh yeah, she's muted.
Maybe I'll go to Joan here.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Maybe
I sure can. Yeah,
muted.
sure.
I don't. Am I muted? No.
No, you're good. You're on the air.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the liability that's involved when you have water damage from an upstairs suite? Because the rules, as I understand them, I don't agree with them, but I think in most cases, a lot of people who are responsible do pay for any damage that they cause to the suite below. But according to the notes with the insurance company, it sounds like they don't have to do that. Am I misunderstanding it?
Well, this is a really, really tricky one. I mean, we could have probably a 2-hour webinar just on who's at fault during water leaks and things like that. And it's a very complicated subject. There's a lot of gray area, and there's a lot of, you know, depends on the circumstances. But generally speaking, without going into kind of any specific details, each strata lot, if it's not a common property thing, each strata lot is responsible for the repairs to their own suite. So, you know, if there's a toilet from the 3rd floor that leaks, and it leaks into the 2nd floor, and there's no real common property that's damaged, it's just the 2 floors, then the 3rd floor opens a claim with their insurance company if there's damage, and then the 2nd floor unit would open a claim with their insurance company to fix the in-suite damage. And then those 2 companies, insurance companies, usually kind of battle it out to subrogate who's going to be responsible for paying what. And that's kind of the general, you know, rule of thumb. If it's not over the deductible, the strata doesn't normally get involved. And so that, you know, that's kind of the rule, even though it might not make sense. You would think, well, 3 should have to pay for 2's damage, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, that's the way I understand it. But if it's $500, it shouldn't go to insurance. So I think the person upstairs should pay, but they don't always.
That's right. And it's hard to sometimes get them to
Yeah.
pay, right? And it's, you know, unfortunately, the second floor in this example has to open an insurance claim, and their insurer would try to subrogate against the third floor unit.
It gets complicated.
It does. It can get really complicated, but that's the misconception, is that the one causing the damage is the one that pays for everything below, and that's not always the case. Because under the Strata Act, each strata lot is responsible for their own damage to their own suite, like repairs to their own suite.
Right. Thanks.
Way.
Yeah, no problem. I can see here, Sonia, question. What do you do if your strata manager won't source more than 1 or 2 quotes? And then another one. Let's see here. So if your strata manager won't source more than 1 or 2 quotes, well, I would try to nicely ask them to go out there and get more than 1 or 2 quotes. I mean, there's no reason that, you know, 5 years ago, or even maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you couldn't necessarily get more than 1 quote because the market was so tight that it just wasn't possible. Now, in certain cases, if it depends who's back end insuring your particular policy, they may be sharing like the same, like maybe Lloyd's of London is on both, if BFL is using them and Hub is using them, and then one of the brokerages may refuse to go out and get a quote just because they're using the same insurer. So that does happen quite a bit, where they just can't get you more than 1 quote, but it doesn't mean you can't try to get multiple quotes. Okay, I'm just gonna close the chat here. Tony.
Sorry, just gotta unmute it first. Since you're on topic of options, so I hear BFL Hub. So who else do you recommend? I think of Westland as well. So you got any other recommendations?
Yeah, before there wasn't a lot of guys. It was a little bit tricky, but there's quite a few that can do it now, right? There's we see one. There's Waypoint is quite aggressive in the market right now. There's a Sarah, or what are they called now? Sarah Capri. CMW used to be CMW. Sarah. There's Shill. There's Westland. There's and then there's lots of smaller brokers out there too. You know, for your complex, you probably have to go with one of the bigger ones, but you know, there's Intact. Yeah, there's probably even, you know, half a dozen at least that could quote on your particular building.
No, I don't know if this is a rumors or this is true. If you get too many quotes, is there any disadvantage? Maybe you get too many people going out there to try to source it, and therefore it can actually do a disservice for you in terms of premium?
I don't really think so. I mean, I think that you might run into the case where they've already opened, like say BFL is using a certain back end insurer, and then you go out and ask Waypoint for a quote, and they're also using that insurer. So you just wouldn't be able to get that quote. But it's not like your premium is going to go up. It's not like when you're applying for a mortgage and you start applying at too many places and it affects your credit score. Like I don't really see that.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Yep. Any other questions, guys? Oh, here's a good one. Another one from Sonia. Are council members able to? Some brokers or providers don't seem to deal with non-strata professionals like volunteers. Well, I mean, some brokers may, I can't really speak to that because I've never really been in that scenario, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to go out and get quotes if you're on council. I mean, they may not want just owners going out there and getting quotes, but I don't see why someone from council couldn't go and get quotes. I mean, in a lot of scenarios, council, you know, in a lot of buildings that we manage, that's what council does. Like, we only maybe manage their financials or something like that. So that would be a role. Maybe the president does it, or the treasurer or something. So I don't see any issues with that. Anything else? Anyone to do with insurance or Tony, you had another one?
Yeah, sorry. Since I always talk about cost because I'm money sensitive. So so I you know, Strata, we always think the best way to reduce costs is group everything together. So therefore you get more leverage in terms of getting quotes and stuff like that, either for landscaping or whatever. We've been trying to get few stratas here together for one company to do 6 stratas within this, because you got lower overheads, right? Because you got a company who comes in here and does the area with 6, 7, 8 stratas. Okay, that's also a strategic way of reducing costs. Can we do that with insurance with your assistance and go out there and say, give me an example? Okay, I'm a property management CEO here, so therefore I got a total of 100 buildings. So if I give you all the business I recommend to Hub, say to Hub, can you give me a discount for all 100 stratas?
It's a good question. It's yes and no is kind of the answer. So in your instance, in your example for landscaping, it totally makes sense, right? Because they have to drive there once instead of driving back and forth and wasting that time to pay their guys for commuting and for gas. So it really makes sense in landscaping. In insurance, there's not really that economies of scale because you know, they're not saving any money doing it that way. Now, we do have like preferred programs with certain vendors, but at the end of the day, say we did that with, I don't know, BFL. We said, okay, and BFL says, we're going to give you a great deal. You're going to get the best deal that we possibly have. And we say, okay, we're going to give you all our business then. And we go to you and we say, okay, here's your deal. And who's to say that's the best deal you could possibly have? What if you went to another guy and got a quote from them and it came in 10% cheaper, right? So I think in many ways, like getting tied in exclusively to one vendor without going out there and shopping quotes around can actually lead to higher costs. Maybe the first year it doesn't, but when people get complacent, they get, you know, the costs tend to just creep up over time, right? And I think you're probably in a better position where you're not tied into anyone exclusively. You're still getting a bulk deal because you're giving them a lot of business, but we don't have to use any particular vendor for anything because we're not, you know, we don't have any kind of exclusivity agreement with them that forces us to use them when we might be able to find a better price from someone else.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. Sonia, did you have any more questions? Anyone else? Anything? Going once? Going twice? Well, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate. Oh, we've got one more here. Last second. Eva. I think you're on mute there still.
Yeah, very quick. I'm just going back to roof maintenance, and you suggested an annual report. We have our building and surroundings power washed every year, and periodically we have the roof treated about once every 3-4 years. Now, should a report be a different company, or could it be the same company that does the power washing?
it's probably going to be a different company. Like I would recommend like a roofing company to do that. And you might even want to use somebody that's, I mean, sometimes when a roofing company does it, their report is, oh, the roof's falling apart, you need to get a new roof, right? So it's got to be somebody you trust, and somebody that maybe even just like an RRO, somebody that doesn't actually do the work. They're just like a roofing consultant.
Okay.
And you could also use engineers for that, but you're going to pay more to have that done. So it depends on the age of the roof and how much work is needed. Like, but if it's coming towards the end of its, I'll use an example, like your depreciation report. Say you've got a 25-year-old roof. Your depreciation report says you have a 25-year-old roof and it needs to be replaced now. And your insurance company is going to look at that and say, well, I want you guys to replace your roof. Otherwise, your premium is going to go up. I've seen this a lot. So what you would do in this case, it's like, well, you know that roof, you can probably get 35 years out of it because you've maintained it. You've done all the right things. So you just go out and you get a report every year from someone credible that you can give to your insurer and said, listen, we know it says the depreciation report says X, but the reality is we have another 10 years on this roof. So that's kind of a scenario that you would might need that in.
Thank you.
I'd leave it to the experts for sure. Anything else? Anyone? Any questions? Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Oh, there's one more coming in. All right, good. I like questions. Is there a way for council to work with the fire department directly, RE Electrical? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course. You can call the fire department. They could come out and take a look at things for you. I don't know how quickly they get over there, but if there's a concern, like a concern about electrical, definitely. Just if you have a concern about electrical, I would advise you to probably get an electrician in first to take a look at it before raising a bunch of flags and calling the fire department. But yes, you can absolutely reach out to them as a council, and if you have concerns. Anything else? Anyone? Okay, well, I think we're going to call it a day then, and probably the next one that we will do will be